Hi, my name is Yulia, and this is the News Brief. Hopefully you're excited to see me again. Here we catch up with several news stories twice a week that I consider to be the most impactful. And then we discuss them together in the comments, so you don't have to suffer alone, and I don't have to suffer alone. As always, please do leave your questions, suggestions, and constructive criticism in the comments, because I read all of it and it helps me tailor next episodes to your needs and curiosities. Let's get it. As we have been doing for the past couple of episodes, this one is going to be divided into three parts: Ukraine Axis, Western Axis, and Russian Axis. And of course we start with Ukraine Axis. And unfortunately, this entire section is going to be basically an answer to that one meme, how your email finds me. So this is how your email finds me when I'm in Ukraine. At 1:30 a.m., Russian troops launched 3 airstrikes on Zaporizhzhia, resulting in 1 fatality and 18 people seeking medical attention, including 5 children, according to the state emergency service. The blast wave partially destroyed a 2-story residential building and damaged a dormitory and a car dealership. The aftermath of the night attack by Russian forces on Zaporizhzhia has worsened. According to the regional military administration, the number of people injured in the shelling has now risen to 21. In Mykolaiv, 5 people have been confirmed dead following a Russian attack, with their bodies recovered by rescuers, according to the state emergency service. Psychologists are on site, providing assistance to 22 people. 1 woman experienced an acute stress reaction and was hospitalized with a hypertensive crisis. I start my day in Kyiv in a shelter when Russia launches another missile attack. This has been the daily reality for the Ukrainian people since the full-scale invasion by the Russian Federation, said Joseph Borrell, the head of European diplomacy, sharing his experience of the morning in the Ukrainian capital. And this is indeed the reality of the Ukrainian people every day. And we're not seeing it on the news because it's not fun anymore. It's not cool. It's not bread and circuses. It's not something to show. It's become a routine. So it's not out of the ordinary. You know, it's not cool enough to make mainstream media. But this is what we do, and this is how we live every single day. In fact, yesterday when I was coming back from Lviv, where I'm from, with my mom by car, we saw an air defense truck in the middle of a highway on a bridge. Obviously, I won't tell you where and when, because that will be detrimental to the security of said air defense equipment. However, can you imagine just casually driving from one city to another and, you know, in the evening seeing an air defense truck with EW warfare equipment and air defense systems, anti-drone air defense systems, just casually parked in the middle of a busy highway in the traffic? Why? Well, because we knew there was going to be an air raid later that evening or later that night or later this morning. So it was preemptively there to catch the drones if they were gonna come in. And they were gonna come in. We did have an air raid in a couple of hours. So that's the reality of life in Ukraine. It's not fun. It's not glamorous. It also does not deserve the international media attention, as it seems. A Russian missile strike on a high-rise building in Kryvyi Rih has resulted in injuries, according to Alexander Vikul, the head of the city's defense council. Emergency rescue teams are currently conducting an operation at the site. 2 children were injured in Kryvyi Rih. A 10-year-old girl received treatment at the scene, while an 11-year-old boy has been hospitalized and is in moderate condition. Currently, the total number of victims stands at 6. And later, the state emergency service showed the consequences of said Russian rocket hitting a high-rise building in Kryvyi Rih. Take a look. We arrive at my favorite section of every winter in Ukraine, and that is emergency blackouts are being implemented in Ukraine due to the risk of power outages due to possible Russian shelling. Ukrenergo has ordered partial shutdowns in Mykolaiv, Kyiv, Cherkasy, Sumy, Zhytomyr, Kirovohrad regions, as well as in Kharkiv. And we are already tasting this reality again. For instance, when I was getting my makeup done to record this segment today, the power went out. I mean, it went back on in a couple of seconds because we do have power generators. Of course, it's a news studio and we need to have uninterrupted supply of power. And of course, there are generators to make sure that it does happen. But that's the reality. Obviously, most of the everyday citizens do not have backup power generators that are capable to power up the whole building or power elevators or power literally any of such things. For instance, in my building, this is going to be felt quite a bit for me and most of my neighbors because I live on the 15th floor, and hey, this is not the type of thing that I'm showing off with. It's, living in a high-rise building in a high floor in Kyiv these days is really nothing to show off with, because that means you are going to be walking 30 flights in my case, up every single day when there is no electricity and no generator to power up your elevator. So welcome back to Blackouts and welcome to a fantastic Kyiv winter. cannot wait to live in a freezer because you know what? Electricity shutdowns also mean heat and hot water shutdowns. Yay! And there is a way to end that for Ukrainians, and that's not through a three-step plan that involves Putin getting everything that he wants territorially and Ukraine having a demilitarized zone outside of also becoming a demilitarized zone for the next 20 years. That is by letting Ukraine use the weapons that we already have in the ways that we deem appropriate and necessary. Because in the entire history of this war, we have never given the West any reason to think that we will not be using these weapons responsibly. Ukraine has secured several agreements with Denmark for the purchase of weapons from Ukrainian defense companies, valued at 535 million euros. The funding sources include the governments of Denmark and Sweden, along with interest accrued from the frozen Russian assets. As a result of these agreements, Ukrainian manufacturers will provide the armed forces with self-propelled artillery units, attack drones, anti-tank weapons, and missile systems. Meanwhile, President Zelensky, in lieu of these news, reported listening to a comprehensive briefing by General Syrsky. Based on this, the commander-in-chief has decided to significantly bolster Ukraine's defenses in the most challenging areas, specifically near Kurakhove and Pokrovsk. And hey, we're going to be talking about Kurakhove later in this report in the Russia section because there is a lot going on there. And, you know, my personal friend, the person that I went to school with for 11 years, from first grade to graduation, he serves in that direction. And they have been evacuated 7 times in the past 2 weeks because every single village that they have been living in and conducting warfare in has been destroyed, and there is nowhere to live anymore. Kurakhove and Pokrovsk direction are suffering, and they're suffering hard. And again, the only way to fix that is to let Ukraine strike back. In the Kursk region, Ukrainian forces are continuing to hold back enemy force of nearly 50,000 troops stationed outside Ukraine's borders. And of course, also that includes North Koreans that have discovered access to porn for the first time in their existence. Why am I cracking a joke here? Because why not? We need some positivity sometimes. And this is how we arrive onto the next section, which is the Western Axis. And there is a lot happening worldwide now that the Trump's presidential transition is happening, and well, Europe and the rest of the world are freaking out what the next 4 years are going to look like. I will say that Trump and his administration have already violated multiple lawful due processes. For instance, there is an act that every presidential nominee and every presidential candidate has to sign by October 1st, which is the non-interference and basically it's kind of like a non-compete clause, that the presidential candidate or nominee is not going to be doing anything that could result in a conflict of interest for the United States. For some reason, Trump's administration and Trump are not willing to sign that document and are late on delivering it because, of course, in Trump's past, there have been quite a few conflicts of interest because they need to happen in order for a president to be able to make money off of his presidency. So that's where we're at currently, and that's already fun. There have also been a lot of tinfoil conspiracy theories about this election, and there are a lot of TikTok accounts on both Democrat and Republican side who are claiming that this election was stolen. And when I say stolen, I don't necessarily mean in a traditional sense or not in the same sense as MAGA supporters were claiming 4 years ago, but rather with election interference from Russia and Elon Musk that started happening about 2 to 4 years ago. While there is no confirmation of any such theories, I mean, it is an interesting train to follow, obviously, because a lot is happening online. Well, and of course, there are phone calls from Trump to Putin and from Trump to Zelensky, and of course, Daddy Elon is somehow present at these phone calls. While he's not an elected official, and that should be illegal, but alas, I mean, we're not going to talk about it at the moment. We're going to talk about something else, which is Ukraine was not informed about Trump's conversation with Putin, according to Kryvyi Rih, spokesperson for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, who spoke to Reuters. Official Kyiv denied claims that Ukraine has been notified in advance of the telephone conversation between Trump and Putin. Reports suggesting that Ukraine was warned of a potential call are false. As a result, Ukraine had no opportunity to approve or object to the conversation taking place. Yesterday, the Washington Post reported that Trump and Putin had a phone discussion about the war in Ukraine and claimed that Kyiv had been informed and did not object. Kyiv was not informed. Also, there are a lot of people in America that for some reason think that Putin is scared of Trump and their friends. No matter what side of this election you're on, have you ever seen a dictator that actually has friends? Putin has people that are useful to him and people that are not useful to him in his own view. Trump and Putin are not friends. Putin is not scared of Trump. So if you're operating with the war in Ukraine ending on the basis that Putin is scared of Trump, put that idea on the shelf and bury it, because that's not the case. Also, for some reason today, out of all days, during this conversation taking place, Putin decided to show his utmost disrespect to Trump by having his propagandists air Melania Trump's naked and, well, nude photo shoots for the entirety of the world to see through Russian television, in case they forgot that those ever happened. And if you ask me why I think Putin is doing it, is because he wants to show the world that he can disrespect Trump and he can disrespect his wife and still cooperate with him. It's a sort of, I own the world type of move. We'll see what happens from that. Meanwhile, in America, the top search this morning with a 700% increase was, "Can I change my vote in the American election?" Hey guys, I'm gonna hold your hand when I say it. No, you can't. You did this to yourself, and now you have to live with it for 4 years, and the rest of us have to live with it too, so thanks for that. Taliban is to attend UN climate conference for the first time, according to Reuters. Taliban. It's a terrorist organization. Azerbaijan has invited the Taliban as observers. They will be able to join side discussions and participate in bilateral meetings. Yay! So the UN is not only useless, it now also quite literally invites terrorists to partake in the UN. What type of a reality are we living in, and why is the UN not disbanded? I mean, I have no comment, no further comment. Keir Starmer and Emmanuel Macron are set to make a final effort to persuade Joe Biden to grant Ukraine permission to use Storm Shadow missiles for strikes deep within Russian territory, according to The Telegraph. British government insiders revealed that London hopes Biden will finally grant Kyiv the approval it has sought for months to solidify his foreign policy legacy. If you don't understand why Storm Shadows cannot be used for those deep strikes, even though they're British, not American, is because American components were used in making these Storm Shadows. So Biden actually has the final say, unfortunately, and I really hope that he's not only going to authorize Storm Shadow use in the territory of Russia, but also all other weapons like ATACMS. We'll see, but hey, Joe, please retire with grace. Honestly, the world needs you, and you can make it into history books as the president that was always very afraid of escalation, or you can make it into history books that as the president who in his final months really saved the world. Make the right choice here, Joe. The discussions are expected to take place in Paris during the Armistice Day ceremony. Additionally, the leaders will address the potential impacts of Trump's upcoming presidency on the Middle East and the possibility of a US-European trade conflict. The Telegraph noted that global leaders are assessing the extent of the policy shifts Trump, who recently won the US election, might enact regarding Ukraine. A senior White House official remarked, "We want to make the most of the time between now and January 20th, when Trump assumes the presidency, and not delay until the next administration takes over." Another source indicated that before Biden leaves office, he's likely to increase financial aid to Kyiv. I mean, you guys, here's the thing. You know my stance on politics in the US. I don't necessarily want to pay too much attention to it going forward from the next episodes, and I don't necessarily want to, bring American politics into my reports in Ukraine, even though I'm very concerned about both. But I will say this. The fact that legitimately a large majority of voters who have voted for Trump are looking up if they can change their vote is concerning. The fact that people did not look up what Trump presidency means before they voted is concerning. The fact that Europe and the rest of the world are freaking out and are trying to make the most of the time before Trump takes office because they think it's going to be a complete geopolitical disaster is concerning. And the fact that people, still a huge majority of people that voted for this, don't see it is not just concerning. It is terrifying. So really, without taking sides here, just look at plain facts. The world is terrified, and they're not terrified because Trump is a strongman. They're terrified because they think that shit is about to hit the fan, pardon for my language here. And that should tell you everything you need to know. Germany's Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock has aligned with other leaders in advocating for NATO countries to increase their defense spending beyond the current 2% target. She highlighted that such an increase would serve the own security interests of European nations, reinforcing the importance of stronger collective defense measures. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz has stated his readiness to engage in talks with Russian President Vladimir Putin, but emphasized that he will not proceed alone. Scholz affirmed that he plans to consult with other nations and include discussions regarding Ukraine in any talks. The Chancellor highlighted that effective dialogue involves communication and negotiations with multiple parties. Meanwhile, the Kremlin has expressed Putin's willingness to engage in talks, although Berlin has not yet put forward any formal proposals. Right, thank you, Scholz. I mean, Putin was always ready to talk in the case that Putin gets everything that he wants. And I mean, it is very, very heartwarming to see all of these world leaders that are not necessarily on the side of Ukraine, but have been pretending because, you know, they have to stay relevant in the alliance. It's very heartwarming to see their masks come off and them immediately say that they're ready to speak to Putin and negotiate the end of this with Putin, right? As in, give him what he wants and end the war in Ukraine because, well, Trump became president and that's the course they think America is going to take. So all of them are like, yep, ready, happy-go-lucky, let's go do this. Scholz, we all know that you miss Putin for the past 2.5 years, that you were not able to publicly miss him and publicly show your fondness of him because, you know, the rest of the world is not too fond. But can you just, like, at least wait a little bit before you show us your true colors again? Because, honestly, that is just a little too desperate. But thanks for that. Now we know who you are. And with that, we arrive at our final chapter of this segment, and that is the Russian Axis, or what I like to call From Russia with Hate. See, get the reference here. Russian forces have detonated the Kurakhove Dam, resulting in the flooding of several villages in the direction of Bohatyr, according to Junior Sergeant Stanislav Bunyatov, commander of the 24th Assault Battalion Aidar, known by his call sign Osman. The roads remain usable, but with certain limitations, as the movement of armored vehicles on the dirt roads surrounding these settlements is restricted, Bunyatov said, emphasizing the extensive damage inflicted by Russian actions. Meanwhile, Roman Padun, head of the Kurakhove City Military Administration, informed Suspilne Donbass that inspecting the dam is currently not feasible. Also, the Wall Street Journal reports that due to the looming threat of an attack on Kurakhove in the Donetsk region, the staff at Kurakhove TPP dismantled the plant over several months to use its components for repairing other damaged power plants in the DTEK Energy Holding. Initially, the plant was kept operational despite continuous shelling. However, in the spring, when the bridge transporting coal to the facility was destroyed, the decision was made to deconstruct the station. Dismantling posed significant challenges, with some equipment weighing tens of tons, causing cables to snap and requiring the use of 2 cranes. The damaged railway meant that spare parts had to be transported by truck, necessitating the reinforcement of bridges to handle the heavy loads. The dismantling was largely completed by late summer, though boilers and other unmovable parts were left at the TPP site. DTEK has plans to restore the station when conditions allow. The spare parts from Kurakhove TPP enabled the restoration of over 60% of the energy capacity lost due to Russian airstrikes in the spring. This is a significant recovery, considering generation had dropped to just 10% at its lowest point. The article notes that acquiring new power plant equipment is challenging, as it is not readily available, and waiting for months for rare new equipment was not feasible. DTEK's efforts to source parts from countries like Bulgaria, Romania, and Greece often stalled or took too long to materialize. And again, unfortunately, this is the reality that we live in. We might be losing 1 TPP. We are also, of course, on this verge of sort of, 20-hour blackouts in Kyiv if literally anything in Ukraine's energy grid gets damaged by Russia, and Russia sure makes sure that they try to do it. Right now, we're going to have preemptive blackouts simply to increase generation and storage of electricity that we can use later in the winter. But, it's wishful thinking to think that nothing's going to change. And of course, Russia continues attacking, and of course, the world continues stalling, giving Ukraine permission to actually defend itself and win this war, even though it seems like everyone is terrified that once Trump comes into office, Ukraine is just going, to be surrendered to Russia. Well, first of all, Ukraine is the only country that can make the decision of signing any capitulation documents. Trump can make the decision of withholding aid, but that does not mean that we're going to stop fighting. There are also a lot of things in place for this scenario because, obviously, while it is unexpected and very horrifying to some, In wars like this and in situations like this, you think about all scenarios, right? So, of course, we were prepared. But also, again, the way to quickly end this war, Donald, and for you to make it to the history books and for your ego to make it to the history books as the all-hero savior, is to let Ukraine strike back and give Ukraine as many weapons as humanly possible because, hey, the defense sector is going to keep making money off of it and they're going to be happy with you and, hey, you're going to end World War III and you're going to defeat Russia. Can you imagine this section of a history book that deserves? You would love it. A Russian court has arrested Ben Mahfoud, an ICC judge, in absentia. Mahfoud was involved in issuing an arrest warrant for Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu. Russia has charged him under Part 2 of Article 301 of the Russian Criminal Code for illegal detention, a crime that carries a potential penalty of up to 4 years in prison. This move is part of an ongoing pattern where Russia, which does not recognize the jurisdiction of the International Criminal Court, takes retaliatory measures against its judges. Aw, I'm so sorry. Another International Criminal Court official and another normal human being who does not like dictatorships and genocide is not going to be able to visit Russia at the fear of being arrested? Oh no, what is he ever going to do? I'm sure he already had a vacation planned there. No. Well, with that, and on that super positive, funny note and Russian comedy club, that is all I have for you for today. Thank you for watching this episode, and if you enjoyed it, please don't forget to send it to friends because maybe they will enjoy it too. Also, give it a like, and of course, don't forget to comment on it because your questions, suggestions, and constructive criticism, and literally anything that your mind wants to write, is important to me, and I read it every single time, even if you think that I don't. I try to leave likes and I try to respond when I can, but mostly I just read and I put it in the back of my mind and I use it to plan next episodes. And of course, in order to not miss these next episodes, please don't forget to follow the gaze and set your notifications so you can see my pretty face twice a week without any delay. See you next time.